everybody. Welcome to First Chapter Friday. Today I'm going to read the third book of Jeff Anderson's series about Zach de la Cruz. It is called Zach de la Cruz Upstaged. This one he even signed for us. It says, "To Mrs. Cap's kids, play your role, Jeff Anderson." So here we go. The first chapter is called Playtime. I've never figured out why laughing gets you into trouble, but it does. Adults spend tons of time worried kids aren't happy enough, but when you do have some fun, it's always at the wrong time. Here's some advice. Just zip it. Don't laugh. Don't enjoy yourself. Don't say a word. Or the next thing you know, you'll end up like me, doing something you don't want to do. Mrs. Harrington's English class was supposed to be browsing for books in the library. I stood by a bank of bookshelves with the usual suspects. Marquise, my best friend, Cliché, who was still crushing hard on Marquise, and the indefinable, original Janie. We weren't exactly browsing for books as much as in one, our favorite, the enormous book of world's records. Wow! Janie held open the book spread on the world's smallest woman. In a blurry photo, a doll-sized lady stood on a small footstool. What? Cliché blurted. It says here she wears doll clothes from the American Girl shop. And she's 23 years old, Janie nodded, skimming the entry. Man, that is old. I bet she's got a lot of American Girl reward points by now, Cliché added, fascinated. But I wasn't paying much attention to the smallest lady in the world. She didn't fascinate me as much as Abhi did. Abhi was not the smallest, but since the day she arrived a few weeks earlier, she was the most interesting girl at Davy Crockett Middle School. After checking out a Nancy Drew novel, she lounged at a table on the other side of the library reading. She crossed her red keds and slid them back onto her chair, her toes pointing down like a ballerina. Even though we were friends, Abhi was still, like the book in her hands, a mystery. I couldn't joke around or hang out with her the way I did with Marquise and Janie and Cliché. I guess because Jose always got to her first, or at least gets her attention. I wonder how I could be more attention-getting. Hey, Zach, do you think this little lady could ride a chihuahua like a horse? Marquise elbowed me. Cliché and Janie cackled loudly, and Cliché yelled, "You didn't just say that, Marquise." Hands on his hips, Marquise posed like a superhero. "I am Humor Man." Shh! I tried to stop the disruption before Mrs. Darling, the world's loudest, most energetic, and most involved librarian, put us in charge of shelving books or running another school fundraiser or something else. But my shh came too late. My friends and I were going down like dominoes, and on my watch. Were we going to get sent to the office? We'd already been warned once today. Well, 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 Miss Darling rested her rose-smelling hands on Marquise's and my shoulders. Using her green eyes like lasers, she targeted each of us. I couldn't tell if we were in trouble or if we would get away with it. We all grinned at once, trying to put on the charm. "We sure do enjoy library time, Miss Darling." Marquise smiled up at her, batting his long eyelashes. Cliché snorted at his obvious insincerity. Then the giggles bubbled up. And the more we tried to hold the snickers in, the funnier it got. Even though we knew we should stop, we couldn't. Somehow knowing we shouldn't laugh made us laugh even harder. Dad calls it church giggles. Cliché hiccuped, Marquise snorted, and Janie sprayed spit as her cackle cut loose, causing the four of us to burst into even louder, uncontrollable laughter. "Yes," Janie tried to save us, "books are entertainment, like movies, Miss Darling." "You and your friends like entertainment a lot, it appears." Miss Darling crossed her arms. We stopped laughing. Was that a question? I wondered. I wasn't sure what the right answer was. It felt like a trick. By the silence, I don't think anyone else knew either. You like entertainment, and it's obvious you already know the art of vocal projection, as evidenced by your outbursts today. She pulled us in an even tighter little circle, so tight it was uncomfortable. I have just the opportunity for all of you to utilize your talents to the fullest. Opportunity was one of those words adults use when they want you to do something hard. What was she going to drop on us now? Chapter 2. Witness projection. What do you mean by projection? Cliché asked, hand on her hip. Good question, Cliché. Miss Darling pressed her hand on the oversized cheetah print scarf, which swooped around her neck like a medieval shield. As in the art of being heard, she widened her stance and performed to the entire library, as in the theater. She thrust her arms toward the ceiling tiles, making eye contact with the audience around the library. She thumped her chest and extended her right arm outward, as in projecting one's voice to the back of the theater. The class flinched at the sheer volume. Why is she yelling? Cliché whispered. I don't know, Marquise said, shrugging and sticking his finger in his ears. Maybe she's mad. She's not mad, Janie assured us. She's talking about the smell of grease paint and the roar of the crowd. People used to tease Janie about her lisp, but now they just see it as part of her, like her brown hair. Janie handed the book off to Cliché and joined in Miss Darling's show. She's projecting to the audience, so the audience can hear every scrumptious word of the playwright. It sounded like Janie was now an expert on movies and the theater. Sorry, Mrs. D, and no respect, Janie, Cliché scoffed, but we're not interested in the theater, which, with its smells and greases and whatnots. She turned back to the enormous book of world records, which she now controlled. Ma says I have a dramatic flair. Marquise stood straighter and smiling. Thud. Cliché dropped the huge record book to the floor. Oh, Marquise! Mrs. Darling cupped his face in her hands. You are just the kind of man I hope will show up for auditions tomorrow. Did I hear someone is interested in a man? El Pollo Loco, Jose's alter ego, interrupted, stroking his imaginary mustache. Everybody watched. There is no need for, how you say, an audition? He gently took Miss Darling's hand. She attempted to pull it away, but Jose gripped it tighter and stared straight into her green eyes. I am the man you are looking for, and I assure you, my lovely librarian lady. I thought he might bend down and kiss her hand, right on her old library green fingernail polish. She's telling us about the theater, Al. Janie nudged herself between Miss Darling and Jose. He stepped back as if Janie were radioactive, releasing Miss Darling's hand. It's about acting, not about who you are. Janie thumped her chest as Miss Darling had. Theater is about who you could be. She may not have been radioactive, but something had infected Janie, and it was the acting bug. Not being yourself? That could be a good role for you, Janie, Jose jabbed, flipping up the red collar on his uniform shirt. Ha ha! Then no one laughed when he put his collar back down. Disappointed, Jose added, just kidding. For the last couple of weeks, after multiple detentions, whenever Jose insulted or pranked anyone, he immediately added a quick just kidding at the end, all at once, as if it were one word, and as if it was an eraser that made his harsh words disappear into little rolls of nothing. He was changing a little, I guess. Awareness is the first step, the school counselor said. At least Jose was trying to erase his mean jokes, but even so, his victims were still left hurt. Acting is a way to entertain people without hurting feelings. Mrs. Darling mussed Jose's hair. Hey, Miss Library Lady, don't touch my do. El Pollo Loco raised his hand to protect his part. Ignoring him, Miss Darling picked up the large gold bell and raised it over her head. Jose ducked. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Mrs. Darling rang the bell, like a town crier we learned about in 5th grade American history. For the 15th year in a row, as sponsor, director, and playwright, I'm happy to announce the Acton Alamo's annual production of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. My Nana's name is Carol, Chewy Johnson said as he joined the growing group. Mrs. Darling slammed the bell on her shelf, sighing, Be that as it may, I am searching for people who can project for on-stage roles. Not me, I thought, trying not to make eye contact with Mrs. Darling. I wouldn't want an on-stage role to save my life. I know how this works. I get volunteered to do something I don't want to do, can't do, and then I'm supposed to pull myself up by my bootstraps, and I don't even know what bootstraps are. I don't even own a pair of boots. I definitely need to stay away from this. I tried to step away. I could hear my heart thumping, and it wasn't a good kind of excitement. My survival instinct was kicking in, like Mr. Stankiewicz taught us about. I was choosing flight instead of fight. What about backstage roles? Bossy Blythe Balboa asked. Now that Blythe was taking the focus. I felt relieved, and I was able to slip back a few more steps. Blythe continued, I want to be in charge of stuff. Her eyes widened. Besides being the 6th grade student council representative, she was always trying to be in charge of stuff, like cooperative groups. In her eyes, cooperative groups were created so that everyone could cooperate with whatever she decided. There will be both onstage and offstage roles, Mrs. Darling tried to keep moving forward, but the questions flew at her, splatting on her surprised face like bugs on a windshield of my mom's Honda. What do you mean roles? Cliche asked. It's like a part in the play, like a starring role? Janie's eyes glazed over and her shoulders rolled back. I took a few more steps back and I leaned on the bookshelf. Count me out. I wasn't going to star in anything. I turned toward the nonfiction shelf and pretended to browse. I have more of an onstage look, don't I? Elle smoothed his black hair. Now even I shortened Jose's name to L. Only a few months ago he was the school bully. Now he was looking for other ways to get all his attention, especially from Abhi. So I guess now he's the type that goes out for parts in plays, performing for everyone. Not me, not ever. How much does this theater gig pay? Elle asked, squinting. We'll all be paid through the adoration and applause of an appreciative audience, like on those singing competition shows you watch. The class gathered closer to Mrs. Darling, leaning in. Is A Christmas Carol that movie with that funny kid Ralphie with the glasses? Marquise asked, zipping his powder blue warm-up jacket up and down. Yeah, I love that movie, I nodded, stepping toward the group again. That blonde kid keeps wanting a Red Ryder air rifle the whole time. The class laughed and nodded. A goofy kid with glasses? Elle zoomed in on me like an airborne drone. Well, 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 Zach. Target identified. That sounds like it was written just for you. Embarrassment missile deployed. Not just kidding. I still miss you bunches.